One thing that's really good to start at, look at some of the channels you're inspired by and use that as a place of inspiration for you. So I look at, I look at this channel, and for me, this is very inspirational. I'm like, okay, cool. The text is the main and then secondary. Or I look at this one. This is the journalism site Vox. And I mean, the thumbnails are very different from each other, but they're very well designed. And I will say this is a whole company. I don't expect you to have thumbnails that are this involved. These are professional designers. And while there might be a couple of professional designers here, the goal is to make thumbnails that you can make and meet you where you're at to make them as good as possible. So these thumbnails, super basic, but awesome. Good photo, clear text, done. All right, let's get out of looking at thumbnails. We can always go back to those, and let's get into some of your work. So the things that I'm going to go over over the course of the next couple hours with making thumbnails is the right dimensions, that won't take long, finding a good image to use, separating a person from the background, and I'll spend a while on that, adding text, adding color or picking colors, working with brushes, and just general Photoshop techniques to make you faster, and design advice to make it look better and better and better. So, like I said, people are coming in from different levels. I hope I'm going to get this at the level that you're all at. All right, so this is a channel, Prensa Asian Diversity. And one of the things that I noticed just straight off of the bat was the dimensions that were uploaded for these thumbnails aren't the right size. And because of that, you get these black bars. So I want to open up Photoshop and show you the very first step in making a good thumbnail. So we're just going to jump into Photoshop right here. And in order to create a new document, some of this at the beginning will be review for some people. We'll get more advanced. You just go create new, or accomplishing the same thing, you go up here, file, new. And then if you're creating a thumbnail, you go into the different sections and you want to go to film and video. And you're looking for the second one, 1280 by 720. And that is the size of a YouTube thumbnail right now. So if there's the one dimension you need to write down, 1280 by 720. And if you Google YouTube thumbnail size, you'll get this. Okay, now we've just opened up Photoshop and we're looking at all sorts of stuff. And my suggestion, especially if you're newish to Photoshop, get rid of it. If you're learning things, maybe there's some things here, but I'm going to get rid of it because I want as little on my screen as possible. I'm going to get rid of libraries. And you'll notice that I'm just dragging these windows out. I can double click them and that will get rid of them. I can double click this and that will get rid of it. And so now all that we're left with, the main thing, is this, which is basically where all of the images are going to take place, the tools, and on the right, the layers panel. And the layers panel is the panel that you will be using more than anything else. You could get rid of everything else, and the layers panel is what you want to have open. And if you ever don't know where the layers panel is or how to get to it, if you go up to Window and then navigate to Layers, you'll be able to find it. So if suddenly you're like, I don't know where my layers panel is, go to Window, Layers, and then you can find it. All right, so those are just kind of a few of the basics of Photoshop right there. And let's actually look at a couple of the individual thumbnails. So just kind of looking at this, let's bring this one in and get it to be the right size. So I'm going to take this image, I'm just going to drag it and drop it onto the canvas. So I just dragged and dropped it onto the canvas. And when I do that, I can see there's a bounding box around it. I'm going to increase it in size. And I'm going to increase this in size. Now, obviously, if I had the original fonts, all of that, and it wasn't a single image, I'd mess with things a little bit more. But, we're just working with a flat image right here. So we're going to make the most of it. So notice that what I did is I made it so it's filling up a little bit more, just so it's filling up the entire 1280 by 720 canvas. Now what I'm thinking about is what's the hero image going to be? And I think it's going to be this guy. So let me do a couple of things. Let me, right now, there's too much text on screen. So I'm looking at all of this and I'm like, oh my gosh. When people look at a thumbnail, they have 5 seconds, 1 second, half a second. In order to see it, you get one image, maybe a couple of words of text, and that's it. Then you're done. So let's play around with it. Now, over here in the tools panel, I'll be slowly introducing you to various tools. Let's start with this right here. And it's just the marquee tool. It allows you to select out a section of an image and do what you want with it. This now becomes the active region. So I've selected out this part of the image, and now I'm going to copy. So edit, copy, edit, paste. There's a quicker way to do this, but I'm going to try to introduce you to as little shortcuts as possible to start. And now this has been pasted in the same place. So let me show you that again. I'm just going to, in the layers palette, drag this down to the trash. I'm going to select an active region, and I'm going to use copy. So Command C for copy, and then Command V for paste. And when it pastes directly on top of where the previous image was. And then I'm going to go to my move tool. And because it's directly on top, you can't see that anything happened. But if you look in the layers panel, so I'm just going to undo and redo, Command Z and Command Shift Z, you'll notice in the layers panel, this just got added. So now we have a layer that's on its own. And now we have this. And these are the two images that we're working with. Great, looks good. I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. I'm going to go to my marquee tool. I'm going to do this. And instead of going to edit, copy, and edit paste, because that takes forever, I'm just going to hit Command C and then Command V. And now we have this guy on its own layer. I'm going to undo that. So edit, undo, paste, and again, hit Command V. You'll notice this guy is on his own layer. So we have this, we have this, we have this. I'm going to go to my move tool, and I'm going to introduce you to another keyboard shortcut. So we have Command C for copy, Command V for paste, and now one that you'll use all the time, Command T for transform. Edit, free transform. And that creates a bounding box around the image. So if you want to do something like drag it out, because it looked like this was squeezed a little bit, you can now do that. So I'm just going to escape out of that. We have this on its own image. And you can always get to so many things in Photoshop a million different ways. So you can get there by going to Edit, Free Transform. You can hit Command T, or you can even just, when you go to the Move tool, if you look up here, this is called the info bar, and this is where all of your options are. So it's kind of the options bar. So I'm going to say Show Transform Controls, boom, and now you can do it. And by default, it all transforms as one. But if you want to squeeze it, either you can disconnect the width from the height, and then you can squeeze things. Here we go. Then you can reconnect that, and then hit Enter. All right. And then if you want to get rid of those transform controls, just disconnect that right there. All right. So let's actually get to how to create a hero element, because all of this has just been basic Photoshop. And if you're feeling, please go faster, I know these tools, write in the comments, or if you're liking it, that's good too. Now, when I'm looking at this, what I like to do is I like to look at it very small, just because that's how you're going to be looking at it on YouTube. So in order to get it small, you can do one of two things. One, you can go to the zoom tool, and then if you hold down Option or Alt on a PC and then click, it will zoom out. So just by clicking, it'll zoom in. This is with the zoom tool, and then with Alt, it'll zoom out. But the way that I like to do it is Command minus to zoom out and Command plus to zoom in. You'll notice we have these ruler things right here. I want to get rid of them. So I'm going to go to View, Extras, and that just turns off all of the extras. All right, so I want to make it so these words really pop out. And we're just going to do this roughly. We're not going to make it too refined. So I'm going to have these pop out. And then I'm going to just kind of brush things in so it covers all of the extra words. So let's go to my brush tool right here. And I'm going to brush on a new layer. Whenever you're having trouble with Photoshop, it's probably because you're on the wrong layer. So here, let's zoom into this a little bit. And essentially what I'm trying to accomplish right here, I'm just going to show this very quickly, and then I'm going to show how I got to this. What I'm trying to accomplish right here is make it so this text disappears. Obviously, if I had the original file, I would be working with that. And let's just get rid of all of this. Yay, all of it's gone. And then go here. Okay, so I'm trying to get it to this. Now, a lot of times when you're running, and then if you zoom out, all right, that's looking a little bit better. We'll make it even better still. A lot of times when you're running into issues, Command plus, Command minus, the issue that you're running into is that you're on the wrong layer. So I'm going to undo a bunch of times. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Here we go. I'm going to move this around. And if you're ever trying to move something around and it's not working, make sure you're on the Move tool. And now in order to brush onto this image, I'm going to create a new empty layer. Because the issue gets to be, if you're on this layer and you brush, and then you want to undo that brush, you can't, because you've painted over the layer. So instead of doing that, click on this button down here in the Layers palette. This is at the very bottom of the Layers palette, and it just has a plus sign. We're going to go like that. And then on this layer, go to your brush tool or hit B to get there. And if you want to get the color, if you're on the brush tool, hold down Option and you can sample. So you can also go to an eyedropper. I don't even know where the eyedropper is. It's right here. You can choose this color, then you can go to brush, and then you can paint. But frankly, that takes forever. So I just prefer if you just hold down Option and then click once, it will just sample whatever color you're on. It'll automatically go between the brush and the eyedropper. So if you're on the brush, you hold down Option, you can just do that. If you want to change what the brush looks like, not the point of this lesson right here, you can go into your brushes, and there's all sorts of brushes to choose from. And that's kind of where I got this one right here. If you're not seeing enough fancy brushes, there's a little hamburger menu up here. And if you go to get more brushes, there's a million brushes out there. So that's where I got this brush. I saw that somebody asked that. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my Move tool, and I'm gonna hit Command T to increase this in size. This looks good. I'm gonna zoom out with Command minus. And now we have one main element, one this. All right, the last thing that I'm gonna do with this one, just to kind of keep getting this in place, is I'm gonna go to down here. And we're gonna make the entire thing black and white. So here we go. I'm gonna go to Hue Saturation. I hit on this half cookie, which allows me to add adjustment layers. And now I'm going to click on this, just double click on this right here, double click on this icon right here, and just bring the saturation to nothing. And the reason that I do this is it makes it really clear what is the hero element. So I can see the main thing that people will see is this person, and then this text, and then this, and then colors are kind of secondary. So sometimes I like to do that when I'm playing around with it. Anyway, the main point of this is 1280 by 720 is dimensions. Let's keep going to different images to talk about having a clear point of focus in your designs with the thumbnails. All right, I'm gonna get out of this and I'm not gonna save it. Here we go. All right, so let's pick up this image. And I'm not gonna spend too much time focused on how to make the changes of this, but I just wanna look at this and ask, what is the hero element right here if somebody is looking at this thumbnail very quickly? So I'm going to first look at it in black and white, because if I look at it in black and white, it shows me what's jumping out first in this thumbnail. And again, in order to see it in black and white, in the Layers panel, go to the bottom and then go up to Hue Saturation, or even just go to black and white. This is all good. Go to Hue Saturation and bring the saturation all the way down. Again, go here, or just hit black and white for some people. Let's just keep it simple. Half moon cookie, black and white. And this says, okay, if somebody is looking at this thumbnail, they're either looking at this first or they're looking at this first. So now the question is, so I have it really small and in black and white. And this tells me exactly what the thumbnail is doing. So then I'll zoom in a bit and I'll ask, what do I want to be the main point of focus? Let's say I want to make it these words, and then the background are the people, and then maybe these symbols. So if I were to do this, I want to make these more contrasty. So I got this as a flat image, and I don't want to take you through how I kind of backed into it. But I just kind of wanted to show you if it looks like this, if you add some colors, and I'll show you how to add colors later, suddenly that's popping much more. And just kind of, if you want the words to pop, you have to make sure that it's the biggest point of contrast right there. And if you want these two things to be the secondary elements, then maybe you need to do something such as add little borders around them. It's thinking about things, how do you make something the point of focus? All right, so I just wanted to show that quickly. It was kind of hard to back into that image, so I don't want to show you exactly how I did that because it's too much. It gets into the weeds, into not what I'm teaching right here. Let's do another one. Let's open up this one. And I just want to say, for everyone making these thumbnails, I am very impressed by so many of the thumbnails and so much of the love that went into them. And I'm hoping that this is helping people get to that next level, because clearly so much work and so much effort and care has gone into them. So let's start with this one. And I'm just going to see, is the focus being put in the right place? So I'm going to use my little methods. Command minus to zoom out a little bit. So now it's, roughly thumbnail size on YouTube. And then I'm going to go to black and white. And so what's the first thing your eye goes to? The first thing my eye goes to is her face, because it is the darkest dark and the lightest light right next to each other. And I'm betting that's not the first thing that this was Hippie Korea wanted to be seen. And it could be a few things that you want to be seen. It could be that it's the chips. It could be the text. If it's the text here, I'm just going to very quickly select this. I'll show you how to do this in a little bit. If it's the text, it could be as simple as just making the contrast much more on it. Again, I'll show you how to do these things in a little bit. So suddenly, I don't think these colors are good. In fact, these colors are absolutely awful. I'm just going to make it a little bit less bright. I'll show you how in a bit. Suddenly, the text is now the thing that pops out. And I just want to make it clear, it's the difference between this and this, as suddenly this is the point of focus. So just think about these things whenever you're creating a thumbnail. All right. And I'm trying to start with these big level things before getting into some of the weeds of some of the other things. All right, I really liked your channel, Yidda, not sure I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies if I'm not. And one of the things that I really liked about the thumbnails in it was I get the impression that you're not necessarily an expert at selecting things out, or you do know how to do it and you don't want to waste your time with it. Because when I was looking at the different thumbnails and the different files, it was like, let's just draw a line around it. Let's not select anything out. And it's fun. It feels really fun. And there's a lot of love put into the different thumbnails. And what I'm going to try to show is how to emphasize a point of focus and still keep this fun, frantic energy, which I think is great with it. So let me just go in, and we're going to start with, if you're looking at a video. So what do I have? Here we go. Let's say you have a video, and this is just a frame from it. And we're just going to grab a single frame from the piece. And we're going to do it a simple way. I'll grab a screenshot on a Mac, that's Command-Shift-4. But if you're doing video editing, let me slow down a little bit. I'm speaking a little bit too fast. I tend to do that. Let me slow down a little bit. I forget English is not everyone's first language. If you have comments, always, please say, I'll accommodate. If you're grabbing a screenshot on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-4. On a PC, I don't know, it's something else. And I'm going to hit spacebar. Here we go. Spacebar, click, and just Google how to get a screenshot on a PC, on a Mac, and you'll see. And then let's go into Photoshop, and I'm going to create a new image. So in order to create a new image, create new, and film and video, this size, create, looks good. And I'm going to Command minus to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to edit, paste, just because I already grabbed that screenshot. Yay, looks good. Now I want to drag this up. And if I try to drag it right now, it's not going to do much, or it's not going to do what I want it to do because I'm on the wrong tool. So let me go to my move tool, V for move tool. And then you can also use the arrow keys to nudge it in place. And I'm seeing when I grabbed this screenshot, the playhead was there. I certainly don't want that. So let's just do this one more time. And Command V to paste in place. There we go. Now we're cooking with fire. I'm going to delete this other layer just by dragging it to the trash can. And if I want to change its size, I'm going to go to Edit Transform, or if you're being fancy, Command T. Let's go here. And if you want to change it from the center, just hold down Option. This is something I should mention. In Photoshop, there are so many modifier keys that do so many different things. If I hold down Command, this happens. If I hold down Shift, you can distort it. If you hold down Option, it goes from the center. If you hold them down together, then you get different things happening. You're not going to remember which modifier key does which. Escape to undo it all. So just remember that the modifier keys, Option, Command, Shift, modify. And try using one, and if it doesn't do what you want, undo with Command Z, and then use one of the other modifier keys. Nope, that's not what I want. So I'm going to hold down Option, move from the center. And it's good to play around with those, especially if you're doing the same thing over and over again. All right, so that's the way to pull an image from a video. And instead of reinventing this, she's already done a great job creating it. So I'm just going to bring in her image and ask, how can we improve this slightly? How can we improve this slightly just to make her the point of focus and just really improve the design a bit? So I'm going to zoom out. I am going to add a hue saturation and bring down that saturation, or just add black and white. And then I'm asking myself, when I look at this, is she immediately the main point of focus? And I'd say, yes, she is. But what if we make her even more the point of focus? I could add a layer. And let's brush around her. We'll use the same style that she was using. And if you right click on the brush, you can decrease it in size. So let's see what happens if we just kind of increase this border around her. I think it might make her pull out from the background ever so slightly more. And again, all that we're doing is we're working on our own layer as opposed to drawing on an existing layer. And that layer just looks like this. And that way, if we have any issues, such as we want to erase a little bit that didn't look good, we can go to our eraser and just erase it. Not a big deal. And notably, you can change what the eraser tip looks like, either up here or in the same place that you change the brush windows, up here. And you can just change it here. We'll make it the eraser the same as the brush. So anyway, is this improving or making it worse? I don't know. It's the sort of thing, just doing it in a way where you're playing around with it. The other thing that I'm seeing in this one is that this little piece of black right here is kind of detracting. So if there's any way to kind of pull focus from here, that could be good because that will make the focus to her a little bit more. So maybe, cover it up with a little white and then suddenly, honestly, that right there, this just like brings it a bunch more. There's fancier ways to do it, and I'm happy to show fancier ways, but I just want you to keep in mind, what is the point of focus? All right, let's actually move on to the next thing, which is selecting people from a background. So before I move on, I want to know if there's any questions people have about anything I went over so far, anything they didn't quite catch, if this is going too slow, too fast, just any questions at all. And I'm going to keep going. Okay, great. Cool. No questions. All right, let's say that you want to select her out from the background. Seems like a good thing to do. So let me show you some bad ways to do it, and then let me show you a good way to do it. So the way that most people think to do it is they go to their eraser tool and they're like, I'm going to erase it. And then they get this white behind, and then they want to put something behind her. And they're like, this takes forever. Why doesn't this work? That's not a good way to do it, people. You get a fun, like we're doing a collage effect, but I'm going to undo with Command Z and show you a much better way to do it. So your selection tools are located up here. Nope, that was wrong. I lied to you. Are located up here. And you might see it as an object selection, quick select, or magic wand. And it's important to note that if you click and hold, you open up to all sorts of other selections right here. So something that was introduced in Adobe CC 2020 is the object selection tool. So let's give that a try. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to click and drag, and then it's going to try and select her. And it will do a pretty good job. And if you were to then go into your eraser, you're not getting exactly what you want, but we're on the right track. Essentially what's happened is by using this tool, we now have an active region of what we want it to be. Now, there's a bunch of different selection tools, and I'll often start with the object selection tool. Maybe you'll get it in one click, and then I'll go to the quick selection tool. And I'll just go over, here's the other parts that I want to select. And you're just trying to get those dancing ants to go all around her. Now, notably, I'm starting with an image that's a little bit easier to select. I'll show you some harder images after this. So right now I'm adding, all of this is adding, Command Z, I don't want that. If I want to subtract, inside of the options bar is an option to subtract. So I'm just going to subtract. Looks good. All right. Now I can do a couple of things. If I right click and say select inverse and then delete, I can try and delete the background. This isn't going to work, but I'm kind of curious what is going to happen. And here, this is going to be weird what ends up happening. Well, that was not what we wanted at all, but it was fun. It was trying to autofill things in, because what it was is when we opened up this image, I'm just undoing a couple of times, it's a background image, a background with a lock sign. And if you're seeing this in the layers panel, weird things happen. You can't erase. It doesn't work how you want. All you need to do to get rid of that is just double click on this. Maybe a pop-up box will appear and it will turn into a normal layer. So now, if I right click, select inverse, and hit delete, we have a background that we can put anything behind. But I want to go fancier than that. Honestly, for most people, job done. That's all they need. The last thing to do is just click, and then it will get rid of the dancing ants, and then you can do anything you want with it. So I think that gets the job done for most people. If we were to add a colored layer, here we go. Let's just add a solid color. Let's make it, I have some pop-ups popping up on my other screen. Blue, bring it behind. Okay, this is an interesting one. I added a colored layer. It's not working. I could tell you how to solve that, but we're just going to trash it. And we're going to do it again. I know exactly what happened, but if you have a problem and it can be easily just trashed and do it again, just try that as the first problem solving method. There we go. So for some people, like, this is all that they'll want to do. I don't like this design at all. I would probably have it as a white. I don't know, all that. But I want to make this selection better. Like if I zoom on this right here, this kind of looks like garbage, this selection. So we can make it slightly better. So I'm going to undo a few times. Undo, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, just undoing. All right. And now we have it to right after I used the selection tools. All right. After I get the selection to roughly what I like, I'd zoom in and make sure that it's roughly what I like. Maybe I'll minus this out right here, do that, go back to the plus sign over here, go in there, go back to my minus sign, All right, this seems good enough. I'm going to let it be. The final thing to press, if you're on any of the selection tools, inside of the option bar is something called select and mask. Select and mask. So I'm going to go up here and it's going to bring up a whole other window. Let me escape and show you that one more time. So you'll notice on the right side over here, we now get all of these other options. So if we want to, you know, try playing around with intelligently, just playing with the radius, great. If we want to smooth it, you can see that this is all smoothing a little bit. If we want to blur the edge, feather. And what I suggest is playing with these options and seeing what works for you. And the other thing that I suggest is move these options just a tiny little bit. You'll notice I'm not moving these all the way to here. This is rarely what you want. It's just like a little bit. So we're gonna go more into this tool later. And if you're not seeing it, if it's looking different, inside of View, it might just have a different option selected. I like to put it on white, on black, on layers, just on anything, just to see what's happening. Here's the original. Here's what this is. I'm going to say okay. And final thing, let's select inverse, delete, and then click. And if I just create a new color layer and put it behind, so let's drag it below in the layer stacking order. Let's try that one more time. Great. This selection is just much better than what was before. So I wanted to show you that with selection. Let's do a few more selection examples. Or yeah, let's do a few more selection examples. Yeah, let's go through these two and just show how you could select her out here and then her out here. And one of the reasons that I ended up pulling two examples from you, Yidda, is I really appreciate you sending a Photoshop file as opposed to just a JPEG. So thank you. So in this, I'm not going to go into the design of the thumbnail itself. Rather, I am going to show you the Photoshop technique if you wanted to cut out a person from this photograph, rather than doing it in a way where you're kind of, here, let's get rid of some of these layers. Rather than doing it in a way where you're kind of erasing around various parts of it, if you wanted to just get a good selection right here. So let's go with that and see what we can get. So here we go. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to Object Selection Tool and we'll see how it does. There's kind of a doorway in the background and it's kind of a busy background. So I don't think it's going to be too good. I'm just going to drag it around. And that's decent. It's a good start. Command plus to zoom in. Another shortcut key. I'm going to give you two more shortcut keys. If you're new to Photoshop, ignore these. If you're not, please learn them. If you hit F, it changes screen mode. So it's the same as going down here, probably something you've never used before. But if you hit F, it goes from looking like this. So let me hit F once. And it kind of becomes more full screen. And what's great about this is if you hold down, let's say you're zoomed in, if you hold down spacebar, so click and hold spacebar, you can now drag around in all sorts of ways. So I'm just going to escape out of this by hitting F a couple of times. And if you hit F again, you can just drag it around to all you want. F, spacebar. Okay, so I'm going to use those two keyboard shortcuts, and hopefully that's not too confusing. All right, now I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to go to my Quick Select tool. Oops, and it's on minus, going the wrong way. So let's put it on plus. Now, if you're doing this a lot, know that the keyboard shortcut to switch between minus and plus is Alt. So if I just hold down Alt or Option on a Mac, it just goes from being a minus, from a plus to a minus. If, however, that is confusing to you, just keep using these buttons up here. If this is too big, you can right click and, oh, actually, no, you can't. If this is too big, you can decrease the size right here. And there we go. That looks pretty good. And we can even decrease the size down here. There are keyboard shortcuts for all of this, but I'm trying not to load on too much information at once. All right. All right. So this seems pretty good. So now I'm going to do, now that I have a basic selection got, let's go into select and mask. So you'll notice that this selection, probably good enough for most thumbnails, but if you want to make it slightly better, let's just see what happens if I increase the radius. That was one thing, and it was the difference between this and this. And what increased radius does, you'll maybe do it by 1 pixel or 2 pixels, is it just tries to look for, are there any frizzies on the side that seem like they shouldn't be there? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's worth a try. Let's do a couple of more things. If you have hair and you're trying to get the hair to look decent, there's an option right here, this second one, refine edge brush. And I think of this because it kind of looks like hair as the make the hair better brush. And the way that you do it is you just start inside of the image and you just kind of go over where you think you want to fix the edge a little bit. And you know what? Honestly, on this image, it's not making a huge difference. Here, let's see it on white. So we can go view on white. Okay, so we can get a better sense of it right here. On black, it was kind of hard to see. And if that's not working well, just go to this initial brush. That's not what you want. Command Z, undo. And if you want to just blockily move things in, this brush does that. So these, I'm showing them quickly, but it takes time playing around with them. So I'm just going to kind of look through here. I'm using spacebar to move around. If I hold down Alt, I can subtract. And by default, it's plus. Obviously, you can get to that here as well. So everything, there's an interface and there's a keyboard shortcut to get to as well. So I'm just going to say, okay. And, final step. So I could right click, say select inverse and delete. And you know what? That gets the job done for most people. But if you want a fancier way to do it, and you do, I'm going to undo a couple of times. Instead of inverting and deleting, I'm going to click the mask button down here. So this is add layer mask. And this is the final step after you have all of the selection done, add layer mask. And this happens. And it looks like it's the same as what happened with delete. Only now, you see this black and white image here. Let me just show that one more time. Undo. Add layer mask. Look at the layer palette. If you click this, you can see this black and white image occurred. And you can do things such as delete the selection if you don't like it to bring that image back. It gives you all sorts of flexibility. I'm not going to get into all of it, but it's a fancier way to go if you're ever like, I want to keep improving my selection more and more and more. Here, let me show you. Yeah, so either invert and delete or create a mask. Okay, so that would be a way to select someone out in a way that's, a bit fancier than this. And, that depends on style right there. Let's get out of here. I want to show you this example one more time, just because selecting things is hard. And it's normally not as easy as I just showed right there. Okay, so on this one, we're going to do two things. One, let's look at it and try to see where the point of focus is, because I like to start there. So let's add a black and white layer just all the way to the top. All right, so now everything is black and white. I'm going to zoom out, Command minus. So the main thing that we're looking at in this one, and thank you to Cassi for sending this in. The main thing we're seeing right here is this logo. And I suspect the main thing that we want to see is either the title or her. So it's important to look at that. Where is the most point of contrast? So if I were to play around with that, here, I'm not going to show you all the different things. I'd probably increase her in size. Here, let me just add a bunch of layers that I was playing with. I was trying to play with some of these images earlier, just have fun with them. Let me turn this off. Here we go. Let me just see. Maybe make her bigger, maybe add some edges around her. And then I'd do certain things such as decreasing other things. Yeah. So maybe, I'm not saying this is a for sure thing. Maybe this creates more of a point of focus. If you ever want to undo a bunch of times, you can go to Window, History, and then just scroll up. This is where it started. This is where we're at right now. Let's get rid of the black and white. That's not helping anyone. Start, end. So, maybe it's a style you want to go with. Maybe it isn't. Let me show you how I did that. So here we go. And I'm just going to delete this right here. Delete. And so I grabbed this still from the video. I don't think I need to show you how to grab a still from the video. And first thing I want to do is select you out. So I'm going to go in and same thing that we've been doing, object selection tool. Now I want to do this wrong first, just so you get a sense of what happens if it's wrong. Let's say you do this. Okay, that actually worked better than I had hoped. What I was going to say is make sure you're on the right layer. If ever you're having a problem and it isn't working for some reason, just make sure you're on the right layer because it might be trying to affect a different layer. So here we go. That did a much better job. I'm going to go to my zoom tool, Z for zoom tool, spacebar to move around. If you're not able to move around with spacebar, you can hit F and then you can move around. And then I'll go back to my wand tools and move it to the quick selection tool. It's subtracting. I want it to add. So let's have it do that. If I want to increase it in size just so it can select a bit more, great. And I'm doing a third example of this only because I tend to make selection look easier than it is. And when you're doing it, it often just nothing works how you want. You can see how nothing's really working how I want. If I hold down Alt, I can decrease this. And you know, it's starting to come together. If you do want to get really good with selection, I spend about an hour on it in my 4-hour crash course. It's a good watch. I'm pretty proud of the way that I organized everything and it goes into it a bit more. Okay, so this is more or less her. Let's go into select and mask. This looks pretty good. I'm going to go here. I'm going to hold down Alt to get rid of this. I'm going to do a radius and see if it does anything. Maybe it does a little. Let's put it on black. And let's see it with and without a radius. Yeah, all right. I'm probably just going to want to smooth it, honestly. I just want to get some smooth edges. If this is a YouTube thing, then I'm going to decrease this brush a bunch. I kind of want these, I want to get in between these fingers. You'll notice that I'm having a tough time right there. And sometimes that happens. So I could show you a trick. Here we go. Lasso tool. And then I'm just going to hold down Alt and click. And that will get rid of it. So again, I went to the lasso tool option and holding down Alt allows me to subtract. And this is when the background and the foreground look really similar to each other. So I'm not saying this is a perfect selection, but I suspect with most of the time that you're making a thumbnail, you just want to get it good enough. So here we go. We got a thumbnail. I'm going to say, okay. And now I'm going to do it the fancy way. I'm going to add a layer mask. Instead of deleting it, I'm going to click on Add Layer Mask. Accomplishes the same thing. Now I want to add a border around her. So in order to do that, I'm going to double click. I'm going to double click on the layer. And I am just going to add a stroke around her. So here, stroke. And I'm not seeing it. I'm going to say, okay. Why am I not seeing it? Looks like my effects are turned off. All right, let's double click it again. Yeah, I can even add another stroke. If I just add this plus sign, I'm just gonna add another stroke. Let's change its color to white. Say okay, increase its size. And then just notice some of the options. Make sure it's set to outside. If it's set to inside, that's not gonna be what you want. So you'll run into issues like that. And it's just something to be aware of. All right. So that is a bunch about selection. I want to move on from selection. But before I do, I just want to know if anyone has any more questions about different options in selecting or issues that you've been running into. I'm going to give you a sec to type. All right. So again, to review, bring the image in, object selection tool, quick selection tool, go between plus and minus by holding down Option when using the quick selection tool, go into select and mask, make it good, and then click mask as that final thing, or just invert and delete. And then you can make a selection much, much quicker. It doesn't work on all images. Some images are super busy, some aren't. All right. Cool. Oh, I'm glad to hear I'm teaching lots of new things already. That's really nice to hear. It's always weird when you don't have the classroom live. I used to travel around doing workshops, and I do a 5-hour workshop. And the people were right there. And like, if they were bored, I'd see a whole audience of people being like, and if they were interested, I could tell immediately, but on Zoom, forget it. Can you explain us briefly other effects, some effects and layers? Yeah, sure. Let me actually do that in another one. So let's go back to this image and let me show you a few different layer effects. Yeah, and this blue is hurting me. So here, we'll just put it on white. I think that'll be better. So if you double click on the layer, and let me be very clear, when you double click on the layer in the layer panel, if you double click on the title, you'll only be able to change the name, woman. If you double click on the thumbnail, it'll bring it up. And if you double click in this area, it'll bring it up. If you accidentally double click on the name and it's not working, that's why. So there's a few options that you can do. You can do things such as stroke. You can do things such as inner shadow and color overlay and all sorts of things. And normally, if it's on a photo, you're not going to do that much with it. It becomes interesting when you're doing blocks of color. So let me show you how to do that. Let's say I wanted to create a yellow square behind her. So we're going to go to our square tool or rectangle tool, and I am going to just draw a square. And it fills in with whatever color is in the options bar. So let's make this yellow. Looks good. Actually, that's a horrible yellow. I already feel bad about that. All right, we're changing this immediately. Let's get something nice and contrasty, maybe a dark. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of fun. And then if I can go in, because we're on the move tool and we have show transform controls on, you could also get here by hitting Command T. If you want to make it so it doesn't have constrained proportions, hold down one of the modifier keys, such as Shift. And you can do that right here. And let's add some layer effects to it. I'm going to get rid of show transform controls. I don't tend to like them. Do you know how to add neon effects on the border? Yeah, sure. Let's add a few things. I don't know if I'm going to get to neon, but we're going to get to some really fun things. So if you wanted to add an outer glow, you select a color. Let's make it red. Let's set it to overlay. We're just playing around with it. Let's increase its size. I don't seem to be seeing anything yet. Are we on the right layer? Always the first thing to ask. So sometimes when I run into problems, I like to problem solve them in front of you so you know how to do it yourself. I'm going to try putting it on a different mode. Multiply. There we go. I'm going to increase the opacity. All right, so just be aware that there's different options, and it takes a little bit of you playing around with them in order to understand what all of them are, because you can spend a while in this. So let's say we create an outside that's, sure, yellow. And let's make it so there is a inner glow that's white. So we're going to increase the opacity, increase the size of it. Not too much, trying to not make it too corny. Yeah, maybe something like this. Decrease the opacity. Yeah, just kind of a slight effect. And let's give it a bit of a border. So I'm going to add a stroke. And let's make the stroke center so we get some nice corners on it. And I'll make it white. And let's increase it in size. So I'm just kind of trying to show that there's a lot of things that can be done with it. Now, if I wanted to do something such as make a neon effect, fact is I'm not making neon effects on a regular basis. So what I would do, and I hope this isn't a cop-out and this rather shows you how to find these things yourself, is I would enter in Photoshop layer effects neon into Google, something like that. And it's like, okay, great. Here's an 8-minute video on how to make exactly this. And it would take me through doing neon. And it looks like this is doing a lot of fancy effects on the border. You know, it's not something I'm doing on the regular. You know, I'd look at this tutorial. Oh, this is interesting. So it's just a glow. The main thing is white. you look those up when you have very specific effects that you're playing with. Here, let me try it once. Let me create a new layer because I think that could be fun. And let's use a brush. So I'm going to hit B for brush, or just select here. And I want the brush to actually be a solid line. So I'm going to go up. I'm going to change my brush to this. What's happening? This isn't what I want. Let's go up here and just go to general brushes, hard round. And for some reason, it isn't working. So what's happening? Let's try to problem solve it. First thing that I look at is, are you going to also talk about the YouTube banner? Yeah, I'm going to do banner editing immediately after this. So good question. I have a whole banner editing section. Okay, so the first thing that I'm looking at is, am I on the right layer? Yes, I am. Are the brush settings right? Yep, the opacity is good, the flow is good, all of that. Do I have an area selected, an active region selected? I do not. So now I look and I see that I have a eraser selected. What I want is a brush selected. So I'm going to go to brush and I'm going to right click and say hard round, and now it's working. So I just wanted to make that clear. And now let's just make it the color white and just say, let's decrease it in size a little bit. And that looks good. Let's make this neon. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to give it a outer glow and just increase this. Let's set it on screen. Screen basically means that you're lightening it in a fun way. I'd need to play around with it, but that's kind of how I would start to get a neon effect. And then I'd look at tutorials and such. And, I could even, if I went to my lasso tool, L for lasso tool, you know what? Honestly, let me leave this here and keep moving on. So anyway, that's just a few things with layers effects. And please do keep asking questions. I'm happy to dish things your way as they come at me. Let me add some text as well, because that's actually something that I'm sure a lot of you are doing things with. Oh, okay, people like this. Great, we'll keep it. Okay, so I'm going to add some text. Just going to go here for the text tool, or the keyboard shortcut for text is T. So if you just hit T, you get to the text tool. Then we can enter things in. Fun times. Now, you'll notice a few things. This text is completely unseeable. It's not showing up. It looks like it's very tiny. So let's fix that. All of the options, or many of the options for the text, hold up, I got to move the bar. I was covering some options. All of the options for the text, or enough of them, are located inside of the options bar. So if you want to change text, this is not going to work. You'd think just increase the size. But similar to Word, first you need to select the text. So I need to select the text and then increase it in size. And it's still not showing up. And the reason for that is the text is white. So let's make sure that the text is something else. There we go. Now, I'm not going to get too in the weeds about what fonts to use and things like that. But here's what I will say. Let me give you a few suggestions with fonts. And if you're done with it, just hit on another tool, and that will allow you to move it around. So if you want to play around with a lot of different fonts, let's go to the text tool, T for text tool. I never know where they are on the tools menu, because I'm always just using the keyboard shortcuts. If you want to find a different font, so you have your list, but if you're subscribed to Adobe, you also have a lot more fonts located right here. So I'm going to click on this. And we're going to get a browser window that opens up. It opened up in my second screen, so it just didn't show. But when I clicked that button, this showed up. And then you get access to all of these different fonts. So let's say that I wanted it to be a brush pen. Sure, why not? And I'm going to say View Family. And I am going to activate these three fonts. This is called Turbinado. All right, it looks like I'm not signed in right now. I'm not going to deal with it, but rest assured, if you're signed into Creative Cloud, this will immediately add it. I don't want to accidentally be messing with the wrong password, wasting your time. And then what you'll see, if you go up here, click on that and activate it, you will then have access to that font. So there we go. My advice for thumbnails is try to stay with the same fonts and keep the fonts simple. Don't do fonts that look like this. Rather, just keep it fairly straightforward. Figure out a font or two that you really enjoy and just use those. Use those a lot until you're bored of them. One other thing that a lot of people don't know about, I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to go up, is one final option. If you find that when you make the fonts, they're a little bit sharp, like they feel, I don't know, anti-aliased weird, there's an option in the option bar to go from none, which you really don't want that, to sharp, to crisp, to just all the other things. Basically, some people, they'll be doing fonts and they'll see them showing up like this, or even like this. And just be aware that this option is here. And it sometimes can make the font look a little bit better. And all of those things I was saying, such as if you want to change the size of it, hit Command-T or go to Edit Transform, and you can change the size of it. If you want to add any layer modes, I would say don't. In general, it's good to kind of stay away from making things too crazy looking. But there's lots of options if you want to. There's all sorts of things to play around with. So I'm going to say okay to that. That's a bit of fonts. Any other questions specifically about fonts? After this, I'm going to show adding a border, and then I'm going to get into working with banner images for YouTube. So any other questions about fonts? And am I still going too fast? Please tell me. All right, excellent. Excellent. Okay, so let's make this the right size. Let's say you're working on an image and you realize, wait a second, I'm trying to make this a thumbnail. This is the wrong size. I would go to my crop tool, and inside of my crop tool, I would enter 1280 by 720. This is up in the options bar. And this is the size that I want. Or if I want it to specifically be 1280 pixels by 720 pixels, you just enter PX right there. Here we go. Width plus height plus resolution. So here we go. 1280, 720. That looks good to me. So in the options bar, it might just be a ratio. It might be this. You want to get width times height times resolution, 1280 by 720. Yay. One checkbox that you want to make sure to leave unchecked is delete cropped pixels. You want to make sure when you delete, so here I'm going to hit enter to commit this as the choice. I'm just going to hit enter. There we go. When you hit delete, you still have the information below. As you can see, we do. And if I had hit delete crop pixels, we wouldn't. All right, let me delete this. Let me move this over here. Let me just increase this in size a little bit. I'm gonna hit Command-T. I'm gonna hold down Shift so I'm able to change the proportions. And what you'll notice is we just created a border. So here, I'm gonna hit Command-T on this. Just kind of get it all going. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to change the font color. If you try changing the font color here, I don't think it's going to work. And some people get frustrated with that. So just hit on your text tool and then change it up here. So that's something to be aware of. And then Command-T, oops, Command-T to increase the size. Let's try that again. Great. All right. Now, again, in order to create that border, I'm not saying this is a great thumbnail right now. This is no work of art. But in order to create that border, what I did is I went to my Make a Rectangle tool. I made a rectangle. So let's just make it the size of this. And then instead of having it fill with white, I'm going to make the fill nothing. And I'm going to make the stroke, I don't know, let's make the stroke white. Or let's make it a different color. Let's make it yellow. That looks good. We'll increase the size of it. And if I hit Command-T, I can just get it to exactly the size that I want. And that is all you need to do to create a border. You just go to your square tool, your rectangle tool, and then when you create it, make sure that the fill is set to nothing and the stroke is set to some color, and you get it to whatever size you want. Hit Command T, and then you can resize it. Okay. I would like now, yeah, I was going to move to banners now. So let's do banner sizing. It's a lot of the same lessons, only it is for banners rather than thumbnails. So let's go into this and let's talk about what size you should make your YouTube banners. So I went in and I added a bunch of your files into this. Great. Thanks for continuing to say, here's the keyboard shortcuts. Just seeing if anyone isn't looking at the comments, like the keyboard shortcuts have been pasted in there. It's wonderful. Okay. So the basically, when you look at a banner, if you're looking at it on a computer, it will be somewhere between, let me go to my marquee tool. It'll be somewhere between this size and, oops. It'll be somewhere between this size and this size. If you're looking at it on a phone, it'll be no smaller than this size. And if you're looking at it on a TV, it will be about this size. So these sizes are all gibberish. So I am going to send you a template that you can do this based off of. So the template, where is it? Channel art template, is that it? Channel art template. Let me just find the website that I got that from and just link you directly to it if you want to get a banner template and use this on your own. Channel art template, YouTube, Photoshop, all of the instructions. And let's just grab it. I can't believe I didn't bring up this link beforehand. All good. Yep, here it is. Okay, so I'm just going to paste this into the comments. That didn't take very long to find. Okay, so if you want this template, that's how you can get it. All right, so let's look at some of your banner images. I will say this, YouTube thumbnails matter so much more than banner images, but that's okay. Like they all do matter. And I did just get away from all the images. Let me just, recent folders, this. Okay, I'm gonna want this again soon. Okay, here we go. Let's get rid of properties. I don't need that. All I wanna see is layers. So let's look at a few. So this is an example, and let's actually move this little ruler line. And in fact, let's actually set up rulers just so we know exactly where we want different things to be. If you have your file selected and you turn on View Rulers or hit Command R, so either way, you can then drag rulers in here. And this is going to be really helpful on this, just so we don't need to look at the template. And there we go. And I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to turn these on and off. It's Command semicolon right to the right of L, but you don't need to learn that. I'm just telling you how I'm doing that. And then let's do one more or two more. This will give us all the sizing. Okay, cool. So now I can turn this on and off. So let's look at a few of yours. So this is an example, the Hippie Korea TV. I think this is really nice looking. I like how there's a main banner. Let's turn this off right here. I like how there's a main banner for the main section. And then if it goes to a TV, it encompasses that as well. I have to imagine you saw a template in order to go off of, because that's what you need for this. Now there is one issue with it, excuse me, and I want to point it out to you. If someone is on a phone, it's possible that the title is going to be cut off. It's possible that the title will end up looking like this and you won't see all of that. And you want to avoid that right there. So here, let me get rid of that. And let me just show you what I mean right there. So if you are on a computer, it looks great, although it actually overlaps with this down here, just something to be aware of. But if you're on a phone, let's get rid of this template. It's kind of annoying. It cuts off right here, and you definitely don't want that. So I would just say, look at this. I'm going to use my marquee tool, but I assume you already have all of these on different layers. And I'm just going to copy with Command C, paste with Command V, hit Command T to paste. And honestly, you could probably just decrease this in size, have the background layer showing up. problem solved. Just want to point that out right there. Let's do some more. Here's an interesting one. Okay, so I really like this one. I was doing some examples that I really like. The one thing that I don't love on it is this one bottom section right here. And I would say cover it up with a flower. So all you would need to do to cover this up is go to your selection tool, quick select tool, go through, select out a flower, copy, Command C, paste, Command V, and then use your move tool, V for move tool, put it up here, and then maybe do it one more time. So let's click on this layer and let's get our wand tool activated, quick select, and let's just maybe select this flower right here. Like you're seeing, I'm not even doing all that good of a selection. It's just good enough. And Command C, Command V, and then go to the move tool or hit V to get to the move tool. I'm just kind of covering it up right there. And I don't know, I personally like it just so you can't ever see a hard line at the bottom of a photo, even if it's not exactly connected with the rest. I think that makes it go. And I just want to give that slight little adjustment right there. All right, let's keep going through a few more. This one's great. Oops, what did I do? I'm going to undo that. This is what I meant to do right here. This one's great. I love that there's bonus information if you're looking at it on a TV and that the border is done right there. No notes on this in the way that it works within the format. This one, you just want to be conscious to make sure to get all of the text inside of the borders. So grab the template, get it inside, and that's what you want to make sure to do. Okay, so this one works really well on a computer and a phone, or actually, this one does need to be changed the way that the sizing is. So let me go to my marquee tool. And basically what you want to make sure of is there's no text outside of this main area. And again, in order to get this template, I added a link, but you can just Google banner YouTube template, keep it within this area, bring the text in, bring the logos in, bring this in. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is rather than having a hard line, try to make it so it does seamlessly go on TV. Honestly, if you're getting to a point where a lot of people are watching your channel on a TV, it's a good problem to have. And that's when you can start playing around with these. All right. Oh, that actually was a thumbnail. And yeah, I don't need to show that one. I have a few more examples for banners. And they are right here. Let's get this back up. Nice, 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 nice. Oh, okay, yeah. So I just want to open up that template again and just say, let's say you've already made a banner and you just want to adjust it so it works within the proper template size. Oops, here we go. I'm just going to open up this file. Thank you for sending in a Photoshop document. Big fan of that. So if I were to go here, if I want to see the image size of this, I can go to image, image size, and this will tell me that it is popped up on my other screen, 2560 by 1440, 2560 by 1440. So now I'm going to go here and I'm going to change the canvas size to 2560 by 1440. 60 by 1440. Let's see what happens. Proceed. All right. And I'm seeing there's a lot of issues that are happening. So I basically what I want to show is, let's say you've already set something up. How do you make it work in the new template? So there's a few ways to go about this. I'm going to bring out this window and I'm going to bring these things into this templated file. So let's just grab all of the layers, all of them, and just drop them onto here. And let's bring them to the top of the layer stacking order. Great. And now I can Command T to transform all of the layers. And I'm going to Command minus. Oh boy, that's big. And let's decrease this in size. So this is just kind of playing around. If you already have an image, how to bring it in. And we're just going to bring it down. And from here, you would need to make it so all the font is in the right place. all of that. The other thing that I would say with this image is light blue on pink isn't going to stand out that much. So here we go. Let's get rid of this. Let's go here and select the background. I'm just going to hit, oops. Just going to hit Command T on this background. And I'm going to do one more thing where I add a black and white layer. And I just want to make it clear. You can see that this text isn't going to pop out too much. And this is just kind of how to test it. So if I were you, I'd probably darken the colors of that a little bit, or darken the colors of the background, or lighten them. You can make it white, just make it so it pops out a bunch. And then look at the template and say, okay, I need to bring the font in here. I need to play around with it, spend some time playing around with it. I think that's enough time on this. I don't want to spend too much more time here because I want to keep going through more examples. Any other questions about that? Cool. All right. All right. I would say the same thing for here. Basically, you would bring it in and you would need to extend out the background just by adding a new layer, saying, all right, what color do I want it to be? Let's use my eyedropper tool, I for eyedropper. And let's create a new colored layer. Solid color. Looks good. Bring it behind. It would take some playing around with, but after some fooling around in Photoshop, increasing sizes, moving objects around, you can get it so it fits into the template really well. So let's get out of this. Oops, don't save. Well, still have that picture up. That's all good. Oh, I wanted to show you one more thing. Let's say you have a fairly straightforward banner, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to add just a little bit of texture to it, what I would say, yeah, you want it simple, great. And it looks like, I believe this is all in the right dimensions. I'm not going to test it. I assume you've already tested it. I would say add a little bit of a texture and give it a little bit of a vignette effect. So let me show you how to do those two things. First off, I would Google some fun textures. So there's sites out there for looking for textures, but you could really just say, I don't know, texture paper. And I'm just going to go into images, and I'm going to click on the setting of, oops, tools, size, large, usage rights, Creative Commons. And that's just like, anyone can use this, not a big deal. And then just see, is there something here that looks good? Sure, maybe you want to use this one. I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy image. I'm going to paste it, Command V. Then I'm going to bring it lower in the layer stacking order. And I'm going to increase it in size, Command T. Now, obviously, this is way too much of a texture. So maybe you'd bring the opacity of it down. Just adds a little bit of flavor to it. Maybe you'd even set it on an overlay effect or a multiply or something like that. And it's just the difference between this and this. Just adds a little bit of a touch. That might even be too much. I might even put it on 10%. And then the other thing that I would do, just to make this look a little bit better, is to add a vignette. And in order to add a vignette, I'm trying to think of, there's a bunch of ways to do it. Okay, here's the simplest way. I am going to create a new layer. Someone's audio is on. I'm going to create a new layer. Yeah, let's just make it a new empty layer. And I'm going to fill it with a color. Doesn't really, I'm going to fill it with black. And in order to get to fill, it's just here, the paint bucket tool. I'm going to make sure that it's set to just this layer. Boom, it's all black right now. And now I'm going to go to my eraser tool. E for eraser tool. Hold up, it's kind of hard to see where the canvas ends and the screen begins. There we go. Now, just a normal eraser tool is going to do this. Obviously, that's not what we want. If we right click, we can increase its size. Let's make it bigger still. We can make it bigger still. Yeah, this is about what I want. Still not what I want though. I'm going to right click and I'm going to make it a very soft hardness. And I'm going to do one more thing because I don't like what's happening here. I'm going to decrease the opacity of the eraser tool. I'm going to do a few passes on this because obviously you want this to be lighthearted and fun and good. And yeah, I'm just going to decrease it. And all that this is doing is adding a little bit of a vignette, which just kind of makes it pop that much more. So so it's just the difference between this and this, just a little bit of flavor. So let me show you that one more time. I kind of went through that quickly. I added a new layer. I filled it in with black. So I just went to my fill tool and I filled it in with black. Then I went to my eraser and I made sure that it was a good size. So it was like a giant sized eraser. That looks good. And I took the hardness from 100 to 0. And finally, I brought the opacity down. And I'm just going to kind of play around with it until it gets to the level I want. So sometimes if you're working with, this works on thumbnails, this works on banners, it just kind of makes it so the middle section is really nice and highlighted right there. And that's just a simple way to do it. And if it feels like too much, you can also bring the opacity of the vignette down. I'm just going to call this vignette. And that's just here. Here we'll go to the history panel. Just very basically the difference between this and this, a couple of layers. So yeah. All right, let's keep going. Here, let's get out of this. I don't think I'm going to be selecting that at any point. So here we go. Don't save. Oh my gosh. I need to show you how to export as well. We'll get to that next. Okay, so this one, I'm not going to deal with all of it. It's not on multiple layers, so it's a little hard to separate it out. You asked about how to give it more of a Korean flavor to it, and I would say probably adding some text that's in Korean would immediately put it there. The other thing that I wanted to point out is I'm noticing these bricks. It looks like you took an image and put it on a few different times. So I wanted to show you how to make a repeating texture because that's something that's sometimes fun to do. So I have a texture like this, but let's actually find one from scratch. I don't like to start with the resources. I like to show you me Googling it because that is part of the struggle. So let's say brick texture, and I want it to be able to repeat seamlessly. So let's get the wrong one and then we'll get the right one just because this is what you're 100% going to do. So here we go. It's a brick texture. I'm going to say save or copy image. And let's create a new document. So file new, and I'm just going to say create. And it created the size of whatever the copied image is. I'm going to paste it in. Yay, we have an image. Now I'm going to select all with Command A. So if you just go to select all, it selects everything. You can see that there's dancing ants that are around the whole image right here. And now I'm going to go to edit, define pattern. Edit, define pattern, and call it bricks. I'll go through this one more time. And now what I can do is here, let's go back to, nope, not that. Let's go back to this. Accidentally shut out of it. If I go to here, instead of creating a solid color or a gradient, I'm going to create a pattern layer. And I'm going to do it with the bricks that I already had. So here we go. Here's the bricks. And I'm going to decrease it in size. And say, okay, I can even rotate it if I want. I don't. But this is actually can be a really cool option for creating good patterns behind. So it's just something to be aware of that you can create a pattern that way. All you need to do is Google something pattern. So sometimes you'll even do this for, I don't know, design seamless pattern. Here, let's go with seamless geometric pattern. And this can sometimes be fun in thumbnails. So I could get something like this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to create a new image. I'm going to paste it in. And then I'm going to say edit, define pattern, geometric. And now we can go into an image. Let's say, I don't know, this one, just because I have it up right here, and create a background pattern. Background. I'm seeing that I'm not able to see it. And if ever there's a problem, it's probably some issue with layers. So I'm just going to bring this up here. Now I can see it. Now I can see it. Not exactly what I want. So let's double click on it right here. Let's decrease it in size. Oops. And you can do all sorts of things with this. So anyway, pattern overlays are really cool. And I just wanted to show you how to do that in case that was something you were trying to figure out how to do right there. Okay, so let me show you a few more resources and a few more techniques. Then let me review some of the things that we went over. I'll answer a few individual questions you asked beforehand, and then I really want to open it up to individual questions. Okay, so that was a lot of things I just listed right there. First thing, I wanted to show you some resources. So if you're looking for various fonts, here's a few sites. You can honestly just Google handwritten font and often something will show up. But a few sites that are pretty good about searching for fonts are things like Font Squirrel, dafont.com, Lost Type. I'm just going to go through a few. Honestly, there's a lot of sites out there. But if you are looking for new fonts other than just Adobe's, here's a few that have free fonts, which is what a lot of people are looking for. Okay, so I just wanted to go through those four: Font Squirrel, dafont, Lost Type, and Hype for Type. I've done more with Font Squirrel. That's where I'm generally successful. If you're looking for a color palette, here's a website. I will paste this in the, oops. Oh boy, this is a longer URL than I thought it would be. Here we go. I'm just going to paste this into the comments. This can automatically generate a color scheme for you. So all you do is hit spacebar, right? Here we go. Hit spacebar, reload. I'm just going to reload this page and start the generator. And this just will do random fonts. Every time you hit spacebar, it creates another color combination until you get something that you're able to say, oh, hey, this is a color combination that I enjoy. And honestly, that's all you need half the time. So yeah, I don't know. It depends what you're going for. And then you can just look at these codes and you should be able to copy them. Where is it? Yep, copy hex. And then if you go in here, you can just paste the hex in. And then go to your brush, or here, let's just create a new layer. Go to your brush, do whatever you want. Start playing around with it. Although the way that I prefer to do it is just grabbing a screenshot of all of them. So here we go. I'm just going to grab a screenshot and then paste it in. And then just V. And then using the eyedropper tool, you can just get all of the different colors that way. So again, that's just colors.co. And that's a good resource. And then the other thing that's good to look into are various textures. And often the way that I get different textures, just to add a little bit of flavor to an image, is I'll just say gritty texture, fun texture, or whatever. And there's all sorts of things that are out there. Honestly, Google is your best friend right here. Just make sure to go to Tools, Size, Large, and Usage Right. Creative Commons. And Creative Commons just means anyone can use it. And honestly, with textures, no one's going to know if you use someone else's textures, but I want to keep this above board. People put work into getting these, or just take a photo of something, make your own texture. Hey, it's a table. There's a wooden texture. That's a thing you can do as well. Okay, so I wanted to show you those various resources just because I enjoy them. Okay, there was a few questions that I didn't get to that were asked and I wasn't sure where to include. And I want to go through them now one at a time. So first I'm going to drink some water because my throat is hurting. And then I'm going to go through the questions. Somebody asked, how can you make a, here we can get out of this screen. Don't save. And in fact, let me get off of screen sharing mode for a second. You can just look at my mug. Hey, somebody asked, how can you make an image more elegant or more sophisticated? So a lot of times that means just using a mature font, using a font such as like an established font. So some of the Adobe normal fonts will just make it look a little bit more sophisticated, as opposed to like curls or papyrus that don't have as sophisticated of a quality. Sometimes those weird fonts are good for projects. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but if you want it more sophisticated, a very sophisticated font will go a long way. The other part of it is when you're doing a design, that if you have one takeaway from this session, if you're doing a design, think about what is my one main point of focus, maybe what's my secondary point, and then everything else is background. So with some thumbnails, person is the main point, text is secondary, and then there's background stuff. On others, text is main, person is secondary, and then there's other stuff. The ones that tend to look less elegant is if it's just a lot of different elements randomly strewn about. It's not that that's wrong, it's just a less elegant look. Okay, another person asks, is it better to remove or keep a background in a thumbnail? So let me actually, all right, I'll get back to screen sharing. This was short-lived. You looking at my face. Here we go. Look at a brick wall of a screen. So let's just look at a few of the images that were here. And is it better to remove or take away? So here was one where I removed the background just for fun. Is that better than keeping the background? Nah, I mean, all that's important is that the main point of focus is clear. If the background was crazy busy, if there was like doors and all sorts of things happening, that's when moving the background becomes more helpful. What are some other examples? So yeah, I can see that you removed the background here. And the thing you want to keep in mind is that this is the main point of focus. Make it small, look at it in black and white, and then you'll know if that's a good move or a bad move. Adding borders. I showed you how to add borders around an image. I showed you how to add borders around an individual person with stroke. Those are pretty good. That's how to do it. Like, should you or shouldn't you? You know, whatever, personal taste. Oh, here's a good one. Should you have a uniform style for thumbnails? My advice on this is yes, largely for your own sanity. So if you look at some of the best YouTubers, they'll have a pretty uniform style because they don't want to reinvent the wheel with every single thumbnail. They'll say, this is the font that I use. I'm going to use this on all of them. If I need to change it, okay, I will, but I'm just going to be consistent. Yeah, here we go, same font. This is what I'm going to do because otherwise thumbnails take forever to make. And already they take some time and you want to spend the time on the video. Get a good title, get a good video, and the thumbnail is the icing. But especially when you're building up an audience, it's good to have that grab their attention. So should there be a uniform style? Yes, as much as possible. With that said, I would say that, so all of these are like super uniform. This one, here we go. This one on, I'll find the one that I'm looking for. Yeah, this one on Vox, these are pretty different from each other, but they're all just individually well designed. And then just speaking of some of your own examples, I really liked this channel. It would probably save you time if it was more consistent with the thumbnails, because I'm sure it takes a very long time to create these. A lot of love goes into them. So it's just something to keep in mind. But I like the hand-drawn quality. It's really fun. And you're getting a good amount of views, it looks like. All right. Photo of face versus logo for YouTube channel. Okay. So it doesn't really matter. No one's looking at what the YouTube channel is. They're subscribing if they like the video. With that said, are you going to remember a logo or are you going to remember a random person's face? I happen to have my face. I'm probably doing it wrong. I wouldn't stress out about it too much. If you're trying to build a brand, all right, make it a logo, build a brand. If you're trying to make yourself the brand, it's a personality, put your face. That's what I'd say for suggestions there. Um, using same image for banner across social media. Oh, okay. So the final thing that I want to get to as far as using Photoshop for videos is I want to show you how to set up files within Photoshop that you can drop into your video, and it's really easy to use them. Basically, how to export a PNG with the transparency, and there's not any problem. Get a lower third or just get an image on screen just so it looks as good as possible. And I see we have 25 minutes left to deal with that. Recommended size for the thumbnail is 1280 by 720. 1280, here, I'll write that down, 1280 by 720. I tend to make mine at 1920 by 1080. It accomplishes the same thing. What's important is that there's a ratio of 16 by 9. But 1280 by 720 is all you need to remember right there. Any other questions about thumbnails before I talk about making other video elements? I'm just going to do my classic drinking a glass of water in between looking for questions. All right. So let's close out of this and close out of this and close out of this. Where did I get the inspiration for what? Is that maybe that wasn't aimed at me. How can I find my YouTube style and thumbnails and be consistent? Oh, that's a great question. So I went to school for illustration, and one of the things that they talked about a lot is don't try to find your style. Just try to make it as good as possible for you, and eventually your style will evolve. So I look at someone such as this guy, the Nerd Writer, and is this a style, or is this just him trying to make things look good? It's kind of a style. It's kind of just him putting text. What I would suggest is make it as easy on yourself as possible. Get a frame from the video, because that's what people want to see. And then if you edit it a little bit, if you take a person out from the background, if you add text, all of this becomes your style. Whatever you do, because you're doing it, it's your style. Spend your time on making the video as good as possible rather than on making the thumbnail as good as possible. The thumbnail is all icing. I would say in order of importance, it goes title of video, first 5 to 10 seconds of video, rest of video, thumbnail, but they're all important. Do we have to make the resolution for thumbnails 300? No, it doesn't matter. So when you create a new thumbnail, so let's go to film and video. See, this is 1920 by 1080. This is 1280 by 720. The resolution, so you can see right here, it says 72. You can completely ignore. All that matters is width and height. Resolution matters when you're dealing with print, but when you're dealing with screen, all that matters is how many pixels across and how many pixels high. So don't need to worry about resolution. What can you use if you don't have Photoshop for thumbnails? A lot of this isn't as relevant, but hopefully still really helpful if you don't have Photoshop. There actually are programs out there literally for generating YouTube thumbnails for you. So if you do YouTube thumbnail generator, you can automatically make different things, Canva, a bunch of others. But then there's also other photo editing programs that are cheaper than Photoshop, because I know not everyone wants to buy Photoshop, and Photoshop cheaper alternative. And all of these lessons apply to that. The buttons are in slightly different places. Affinity Photo is absolutely amazing. Pixelmator is another one. So I'll just type that in. Affinity Photo, Pixelmator. Those are some good alternatives. I'm not going to talk about that too much more just because, yeah, I'm trying to stick with Photoshop. Somebody asked, what's best for thumbnails, PNG or JPEG? Best for thumbnails is PNG. However, thumbnails can be no more than 2 megabytes. So let's say you make a thumbnail. Here, I'm going to, oops. Let's say you have a thumbnail and we're just going to make it normal size, 1280 by 720. And you go thumbnail, great. And let's bring in a couple of images into it. This is going to be the worst designed thing you've ever seen in your life because I'm just trying to show things about saving out files. Actually, let's just use this thumbnail. This is a totally great thumbnail. So if you go to save this, you go to File, don't go to Save, don't go to Save As, go to Export for Web. So either Save for Web or Export As. So I'm gonna go for Export As. And this pops up. And what you're trying to see is how big it is right here. So it's 1 megabyte. And so this is a great size. Once again, the way that I got that is I went to File, Export, Export As. And notice there's a keyboard shortcut for this, but I'm not going to load you down with that. And that will bring all of this up. And this will just allow you to make it, you know, PNG or JPEG. Honestly, it's going to be the same. The difference between a PNG and a JPEG is if a JPEG is a lower quality. I've been using the old interface for this, honestly. I'm very used to, here, this is kind of an aside. I'm very used to the Save for Web legacy interface that looks like this. And honestly, I can see why they changed this. This is needlessly confusing. So anyway, the thing with PNG is it's non-lossy, which is to say you have the entire quality of it. So as long as this stays under 2 megabytes, do PNG, otherwise do JPEG. You're going to be fine either way. That was too long of an answer for that question. Okay, and then you just press export. Great. So let's do a couple, any other questions about thumbnails, please? Like, give me any curveball you want, can't be too specific. And then I'm going to talk about making video elements. Then I'll open it up for questions about Photoshop in general. And then we'll all be done because 2 hours of this is, you know, a lot of information to download. Questions, make some elements, just go ahead with it. Great, I will do that. Okay, so when you're making elements for a video, you're gonna create a new file. You're gonna go to Film and Video. You're gonna say HDTV. So it's 1920 by 1080 because typically that's the size you're gonna be working at. And I'm just gonna say, okay, create. And what's created is an image that has a white background, and you can see that in the layers palette. There's just a white background. I'm gonna get rid of properties, and I'm gonna get rid of history. So all we're looking at is the layers palette and this. Now, if I wanted to have text on screen, chances are you're gonna do this in Premiere, or you're gonna do this inside of Final Cut or whatever you're using. But let's say you wanna create text that you'll reuse over and over again. Let's say crazy times. And I am just going to hit this, hit Command T to increase it in time. Inside, size, I can talk. I'm gonna go to T for text. I'm gonna change this to a font that I would maybe use. Sure, just wanna make it not completely disgusting looking. And let's just make it strong. Let's make it black. I'm going to get rid of this white background and I'm going to give it a little bit of a stroke. So here we go. And let's put that stroke on the outside and make it, sure, look like this. Okay, now I could go in and if I want to use this in a video, I would save it as a PNG. So File, Save As, PNG. And this will keep the transparency in there. So I'm just going to say crazy times and say, okay. And this is the same as going to File, Export, Quick Export as PNG. That's probably the quicker way to do it right there, honestly. So inside of my files, let me get my folder back up. Oops, let me get this. Korean lesson. And here we go, crazy times 2. These should be identical. And what we have now in the Finder, if I can find it, let's just change this by date modified. We have an asset that we can just throw into a video and it has transparencies and it has whatever we want. So I don't know if there's assets that people are looking for. Save as PNG to keep transparency, exactly. So I just kind of wanted to show you that. So if you were to then go into the video program, you could drop that in. And this becomes particularly good if you have an image that you're working with. So here, let's get something that's crazy. All right, so let's say there's an image like this. And you want to select this out. So we're just going to go to the select tool up here, quick select. I'm going to increase it in size. And this is something that isn't necessarily all that easy to select out. And we're not going to spend too much time selecting because that's not what this lesson is about right here. Here we go. Yeah, looking good. And I'm just going to go to select and mask. And the reason that I'm doing something that's difficult to select out is because there's no way you would do this in a video program. That would be very difficult to do. And let's say you wanted to add this. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add a mask. Looks good. And now what I could do, just go to V for Move tool. I could add this element, File, Export, Quick Export as PNG into a video. So cheese, etc. And it has a transparency and we're good to go. So here we go. This could then be added into a video and you could do with it whatever you want right there. So saving as PNG is huge if you're just trying to pop things on screen in a video. All right. That's most of what I wanted to teach. So I want to review everything that we just went over, leave you with some final websites that you can look at and ways of learning a lot more things on your own. And then I really would, like, I like answering questions. That's what I'm here for. That's why this is different than just a recorded YouTube video. So here we go. Let's go to the name and let's just quickly go through. Main takeaway, get a hero element. So all of these have hero elements. If you want a consistent style, that's good, but don't stress about it too much. Try to have fun with it. That's what's really important right there. When you're working in Photoshop, make sure that it's the right dimensions, 1280 by 720 for the banner, for the thumbnail. And then I sent you a template for the banner. Only do, as few things as possible. People aren't going to follow you on social media from a YouTube thumbnail. This is probably just being reused in multiple places. That happens. Limit things, or if you're going to have a lot of things, make sure there's a clear hero element and just make sure you can look at it in black and white. You can make it smaller. It's a good way to see, do I have one area that has a huge amount of contrast? Looked at that enough. When selecting, the way to go about doing it is to go to Object Selection, Quick Selection, Select and Mask, and then all of the options inside of here. And then finally, inverting selection and then deleting, or just adding a mask. Those were some of the big takeaways right there. And then I see there's a question right there, so let me address it. Hold up, my throat's hurting me. I'm in California right now and our air is not great. So let's see. What do you think that the most important element is in a profile photo on YouTube? Honestly, most people don't remember most profile photos. I would say go big and bold. If I were to look into that, I would look at some of the channels that I enjoy the most. So here, let's go into the deep dark web of what channels I'm getting up. You can see there's just bright colors. There's a single shape. It's bold. It's iconic. If it's something like a person, it kind of looks generic like every other person. But if the brand is you, that's kind of the best way to do it. I'm just looking at some of these other things right here. Yeah, just keeping it bold, having it jump out. You can see a single solid color goes a long way. The truth is, nobody is going to subscribe or not subscribe to you based off of that. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. The most important thing as far as images on YouTube is concerned are the thumbnails. And after that, it's your icon, and after that is your banner. But the content is so much more important. All right, any other questions? I'm going to try and bring up other resources if there aren't any other questions. But honestly, I want to bring this to a close. So fill me in if there's questions and I'll answer them. And otherwise, I'll see if there's a few more resources I can dig up just to give you hints of where to go in the future. But yeah, just looking at some things. kylebrush.com. Okay, so if you want to see some really crazy brushes and play around with them, and these are free to anyone who has the Creative Cloud, kylebrush.com has some great brushes right there. What's the difference between a PSD and a PSB? Excuse me, oh my gosh. PSB is for files over 2 gigabytes. You shouldn't have to deal with it unless you're doing giant files. For a thumbnail, it doesn't matter. What are my favorite fonts for the thumbnail or to emphasize some points? Sure. My personal favorite fonts, title fonts. I like some of the basic standard ones. So the ones that I tend to go to, excuse me, are Futura. And I mean, it's been used to death, but that's because it's amazing. So Futura, it has a lot of different variations, and it's just a good, solid font. Another one, if you want a serif font, would be Garamond. Do I not have that on my computer? All right, I guess I'm mostly using sans serif. One font that I enjoy that some people like, some people don't, is Gil Sans. So here we go. I can, type these in. Honestly, it's just find a font or two that you really enjoy and stick with it. But yeah, Gil Sans is great. Oops. Have I been typing privately to one person when I've been trying to type to everyone? Oh, that's so funny. I tried to message to the group before, and for some reason it was defaulting to a single person. Gil Sans, Futura. Oh my gosh, no, that's on me. I swear I use Zoom all the time. And then what are my favorite fonts for the thumbnail or to emphasize some points? Yeah, water. Wonderful, wonderful. All good. Wait, what are some things that I typed in here before? I don't know. Nothing important. Nothing I didn't say out loud for sure. So those are a couple of fonts that I use right there. If you're going into here, let's just go into here. And if you're going into Adobe Fonts, I think you can even search by popularity. And the basic ones tend to be really solid. So I like to go for clean fonts or geometric fonts rather than some of the funnier looking ones. So I just try to keep it simple. Yeah. All right, I'll keep bringing up brushes, or I'll keep bringing up resources, but I'm just, yeah. Here we go. Some fun color pickers. Peloton's a good one. Color CC, but honestly, coolers.co, that'll give you good options right there. There's lots of things out there for keyboard selections. I don't think you should need to look for any public domain pictures, textures I went through. Yeah, I went through all that. Can you show your thumbnail in PSD as an example? Absolutely. That's a great question right there. Let's see if I have any recently on my computer and they haven't been, done into the void of a backup drive. That is a wonderful thing to ask about. Just going through my folders now. Thumbnails, that sounds promising. Here, let's find some good ones in here. Some of these were pretty basic thumbnails that I was doing. I just want to get some good ones. This was basically, I tried to do a similar format for all of them. So it's just one screenshot and then a couple of things on screen. Here we go. This is, here's one. I like this one. So what I have in here, just to kind of take you through the file, I have a screenshot from Photoshop. And then I just added on a block of color. And then I added on the Photoshop logo. And then I covered up the Photoshop logo. I have another layer. And then I have some text. And that's it. Here, let's do another one. Just trying to keep it simple. Ideas, work in progress. Maybe that'll have something good. I'm just going to search my computer for thumbnails. And Photoshop. All right, I'm not pulling, oops, this could be interesting. man, all of these are flattened, unfortunately. I'm trying to find the actual Photoshop files. I don't think I can pull it up quickly enough to make it relevant, unfortunately. I would like to show that though. But just to give you an idea, there's no deep secret with making thumbnails. It's all of the techniques that we've been talking about. So for instance, if it's this, what are we looking at right here? It's a vignette around everything. It's a couple of colored boxes. It's a font, and it's a lot of images that were brought in. If it's this, it's a screenshot, and it's the letters. If it's this, I mean, it's just this guy selected out, a couple of other people selected out. I changed their colors a little bit. I drew on it with a brush. I added some just a box of color. Like, there's no deep secret with any of this. It's not the tools in Photoshop. It's just getting the designs and getting those reps in and making it as good as possible. What are some other ones? Yeah, I mean, this one actually took a while because I was trying to find the perfect image to make this, and I still don't know if it was the best thumbnail, but I was proud of it. Anyway, I want to end it there. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I'll stick around for the next 4 minutes or so if you guys have more questions. And yeah, I had a lot of fun kind of going through all of your various images. Always the wrong measurement for YouTube thumbnails. All right, so now you know, 1280 by 720. That is the trick right there. Thank you, guys. Glad to hear you learned a lot. All right, glad it was really helpful. Yeah, I'm hoping this is really good. And like, you have to put it to use immediately. You have to start practicing these different things. I make selecting look easy. It's much, much harder than I make it seem. You got to play around with adding layer styles, and you got to search for various things on your own as you're doing individual topics. Again, also, if you're running into any issues with Photoshop, please, by all means, you can look up my 4-hour Photoshop crash course. I review a lot of the same things in that. It's not geared specifically towards YouTube, but if you're like, what was that thing with selection? Great. And then, yeah, if you want to go to the next level, I have a great video talking about masks. So if you go there and you're like, I want to learn more, like if you peek around my channel, I talk about masks. I do 1-minute tips. There's things there. Enjoy. All right. I'm glad that was helpful, guys. This is tea. Just going to close out of this. All right. Have a nice day, everyone. Any closing thoughts from the manager as far as what things are coming down the pipe, or just call us a day? Oh, one last question. What do you think is more important in a thumbnail, text or picture? Honestly, I think the picture is more important because people are looking at the thumbnail to get a sense of what this video is going to be about. If there's text and no picture, people will be like, what is this? But if there's simply just a picture, people are like, all right, cool. I know what I'm in this for. So that's what I would say there. He learned the big secrets of using Photoshop. Great. I love that. Yeah, I will tell you, it's the air right here. You should look up some pictures of California right now. The entire place was red yesterday. Weird weather. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm just going to hang out and take these compliments. What other fun YouTube channels did I pull up? These are examples of above and beyond thumbnails. These are by professional designers. This isn't, what you're going to be doing if you're just one person. You got to build up to that. Yeah, I don't know. These are I was just looking up some of the best YouTube channels, and a lot of them just take really good screenshots. The time now in Egypt is 4 a.m. Well, thank you for staying up for this. Or you're just a night owl and All right. Have a good night, man.